Hello, everybody. It is 7:31 p.m. Central Time on the 5th of March, 2021. It's Friday night here in the United States, already Saturday internationally, and I hope you're doing well. We are here to talk about seismic events, and of course, if you're not aware of what's been going on in the past day, we are still dealing with the after effects and still dealing with the large earthquake activity in the West Pacific, north of New Zealand. And you can't even really see New Zealand because of all the earthquake activity here, but zooming in on it, on the north tip of New Zealand, going all the way up into the central Kermadec Islands, we were dealing with 6s and 8s, or an 8, 8.1, and multiple 6s striking in two different locations, 500 or more miles apart. One location off the northeast tip, the catcher's mitt position, if we call this, right here at the Bay of Plenty, and going up and across out here to the plate boundary. Now, I'm going to be referencing the plate boundary for the rest of this update. Oh, hold on, let me close this window here. And the plate boundary map, which we use from the USGS, showing us the red lines where the plate boundaries come together. So again, you'll see these two clusters. Again, they're about 500 miles apart or so. 200, 400, about 500 miles apart. Now, yesterday it started with a 7.3 earthquake here. Then, a few hours later, about 4 hours later, a 7.4 earthquake struck up here. Then 2 hours after that, the 8.1 struck, the big one. Now, since then, multiple 6s have hammered off, going on down to New Zealand again, which just got struck by a new 6.4 earthquake in the last few hours. So big activity is still breaking out between these 2 points. Additionally, hold on, sorry guys, the microphone's falling again. I've got the cheapest microphone, it's a snowball mic, sorry. It really is, it starts falling, okay, anyway. Need to invest into the operation a little more, sorry about that. So 5s going out and away, spreading out to our letter X down here, and 5s spreading out all the way down to Antarctica, meeting into the South Sandwich Islands tip. Additionally, near 5s spreading out across the plate boundary edge over to the east, and near 5s spreading out to the middle point into Peru. Now I'm going to show you this on the USGS map here again. Going across the Pacific, look, down here, 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 and all the way down at the east-southeast tip. This whole thing started to move on a near 5.0 basis in the last day. So something shifting out and spreading across, obviously. You can see it again there, spreading out today. Over to the west, the same thing's going on. We had new 5s spread out over to the west across to the Indian Ocean and to the middle point in Sumatra, Indonesia. And we're talking about 4.9, 4.6, 5.6, and 5.1. Now the 5.6 and 5.1, we're going to go back over to the USGS map again. Over here, on the western tip of the Indo-Australian plate, both sides. So wait a second, over here and over here. A spread going across all of South America and a spread going out across the whole Indo-Australian plate. So far, since the big one hit here. But the distance over to the west and the distance over to the east is about the same, wouldn't you say? Or maybe we should look at the globe. It might be a little bit better seen here. From this point all the way over to the east, and from this point all the way over to the west, the disturbance is taking place now. Up to the north, right after the big one last night, all this took place. The northwest Pacific also moved 5.0, 4.6 to 4.9. Okay, so in other words, the movement took place, same size, over to here, and up to here. That's a huge area to move in a day. Now, a lot of people are talking about what we're going to watch for, what they're thinking is going to happen. I'm going to issue the new forecast starting right now for the whole planet, and we'll recap the earthquakes as we go along the way over into Europe and over into the United States. So let's start right here where the big activity is. If the activity does not spread out beyond all the way over here at the western tip of Indo-Australia and beyond the eastern tip over here to South America, if it stays centered in this middle point that just got hit by a new 6.5 off the coast of New Zealand in the past 2 hours. But there's a middle point between these two large areas that are moving that has not broken at all. We've got big earthquakes here, and zooming in on it, look at the spread as where it's going. It's like a number 7 shape almost, going from here at New Caledonia over to the east and down to the south. It's itself about 300 to 400 miles across, the area that's shifting just here at, again, the central Kermadec. Going down to the south, the area is about 100 miles across, but look, it's a large area that's breaking as well. So we have a large area that's breaking here, and we have a large area that's breaking here. We have deep earthquakes still hammering up on the underside of the plate coming in, so I'm going to issue the warning now for the Kermadec to be on watch for 7.0 activity to break out where all these rings are overlapping. Do you see how they all overlap there right at the central Kermadec Islands? We'll watch there for new 7.0 plus activity to complete the area in between these two spots, which are shifting. This should happen within the next 7 days or so. Down to the south, we have to warn Wellington to Christchurch with the middle point at Kaikoura, but just a little bit north of Kaikoura, now that we have a 4.1 there yesterday. I'll warn right here at Wellington, but I have to warn really, like I said, everybody from Christchurch all the way up to the north central part of the North Island of New Zealand, and we should see something in the near 6.0 level. So while it should be a 7 here, I think we're dealing with a 6 down here, or near 6. Something noteworthy, if it strikes out in the ocean, it won't matter at all, but if it strikes close to land or in Wellington itself, I got a lot of viewers down there, Animatronic lives there. If it's any bigger, if I'm wrong and it's larger, you'll feel it across the whole region. Look, you're one step away from the big break, so I wouldn't be shocked if it spreads down the plate boundary to you down at Wellington or very close to it. Again, look where we are. If we're looking for a break here at the middle point and we go down to the south and we got another earthquake down here, then we look at the halfway point around the bend. That's the south part of the North Island or the north part of the South Island. And the time frame's the same. We'll watch for the next week. Hope I'm wrong. But it doesn't look like we are. Look, the spread is taking place all the way up to the west-northwest. Look at the 6.1. So you got a 6.5 down here in New Zealand. You got a 6.1 up here in between all this mess. And in the middle, there's the 8. So it stands to reason that's going to happen. Now, let's go over to the west and look at this giant open silent zone across all of eastern Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, going over to Vanuatu, Solomon Islands. This whole area, it's again, 3,000 miles across, and it's completely silent with no seismic activity at all. Well, we look in the middle of the open area, no matter how big across it is, so we'll watch right here in the middle as our first spot for the next 7 days, and the potential to go up to upper 6, just like what's going on down in New Zealand. Look, it's spreading down in New Zealand. Don't you think it's going to spread over to the west as well? I do. That's why I'm issuing the warning right now, where all the plate boundaries come together, west of Papua New Guinea, east of Indonesia, south of Philippines, right at the junction point. The secondary warn point is Bali, Indonesia. So let me show you these two spots. Right here, it's pretty obvious. Giant open area where all the arrows point together and come in. And we'll watch for upper 6 there. Now let's go back 2 days. Let's see if that's even on the feed. There we go. So 4.7 2 days ago, right at the spot that I'm now issuing the new warning for a large quake to strike. But look at the middle point between these two sets of quakes. The quakes on the western side and the quakes on the eastern side. Again, right down here in the middle. What would you say the middle point is if we go around the bend of the plate? The bend of the plate is right here. Well, lo and behold, it's where the plate boundaries go on one side and the other of Java and Bali. And Bali is this tiny little island right here where the end of the plate boundary comes in. So that's where we're going to watch for our secondary movement, and it should too also be in the 6th level. I would think less than 6.9, but more than low end 6, so probably in the mid-range 6th level is due for Indonesia, and I'm going to watch that middle point there. Okay? As we go to the north, Philippines. You are going to get hit by 6.0 plus activity. I think we're going to, each time we go out across a region, we're going to take about a half magnitude step down. So that puts us between 6 and 6.5 in the middle of this giant open silent zone. So if we're going to get a near 7 down here, by the way, that's what we're going to see right down here, an upper 6, then I would look for a lower 6 to mid-range 6, low to mid, right here at the middle point between our earthquakes to the north and our earthquakes to the south. And again, we have to go along the red line of the plate boundary. So we'll watch right in the middle here between our two other sets of quakes. That's Philippines. And it should be in the low end 6 level. Over to the east, let's warn Guam. This tiny little island right here. Just to the east-northeast of it. But look, anytime we get above 6, you'll feel it. So it's going to be about the same size that strikes over in Philippines will also strike out here over between our other sets of quakes over here next to Guam. So if it's 6 on one side, I'd think it would be like 5 point something on the other, 5.9 on the other. Something about the same size on both sides. Both sides of what? Both sides of this. Equal distribution as energy is going to be traveling out both directions and recombine on the coast of Japan again, where Japan's about to get hit. Japan's about to get hit by something about the same size that struck previously this past week. Well, actually a little bit less because they got a 7.3. I'm going to think these 2 6s and all the energy coming around both directions, coming from the south, coming from Philippines and coming from Guam, repooling back up here, and the same size that strikes down here in Indonesia should strike up here at Japan. So if it's upper 6 in Indonesia, it's going to be another upper 6 in Japan. The last one was a 7.3, so I mean the difference is minuscule once we get between 6.9 and 7.0. The spot to watch, let's actually find the middle point between all our sets of quakes. Okay, now hold on 1 second because we've got a big line of quakes going along the Izu Ridge up along the coast of Japan. No duh because of the 7 that struck there last week, but big open silent zone across South Japan now. Kyushu right here. But wait, aren't there erupting volcanoes at these locations? Yes, there are. Let's go over and check the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center and see what's going on in Japan. Well, right here, Suwanizajima, that's in South Japan, right by where I was just talking. Erupting right now. Let's go down the list and look at all of them. Popocatépetl in Mexico, Fuego in Guatemala, a couple times. Suwanizajima and Sinabung over in western Sumatra, Indonesia, 10,000-foot eye blast. Kluchevskoye up in Russia, at Kamchatka. Sabancaya in Peru. Sakurajima again in Japan. Sanjay, Sakurajima, we're just going to repeat. It's everybody on the list is just a repeat, basically. 14,000-foot high blast at Raung in Indonesia. Looks like Indonesia is starting to pick up in the number of eruptions. Sanjay again, we're getting back to yesterday now. I'm just looking for any other new additions to the list. Pacaya in Guatemala. All right. Now, the reason we check the volcanoes, I don't forecast volcanic eruptions, but for instance, Suwanizajima and Sakurajima are right here in the middle of this giant open silent zone. They're erupting right now. So you can imagine some 5.0 earthquake activity. Equivalent there, it's just not showing as seismic. It's eruptive. So if you imagine a new 5 right in the middle of all these 4s, that divides the area in half. And that means the new 6 actually won't be striking in Japan proper. It'll be striking the South Japanese island of Okinawa, the halfway point between the volcanoes and the previous earthquakes from the past 48 hours. So again, if you take the volcanoes into account and count those as an earthquake, quote-unquote, right here where the V is, then that divides the area in half and puts the new halfway point between Taiwan and the volcanoes. Let's go look on the USGS map and show it to you this way. So this means new upper 6 level activity. And it's pretty rare to get large earthquake activity in the Ryukyu Islands here. But the halfway point between Taiwan and the volcanoes in Japan, if we go along this, puts it right here. And again, that's Okinawa right in the middle. So watch out. I mean, if I'm wrong, it'll come in lower, and it'll be in the 6th level still, but it won't be in the upper 6th level. But I would think it would be about the same size that's put into the system. Will recombine and come back out of the system up to the north. Now, what about the coast of Japan and further to the north up to Kamchatka. Well, the spread for this 8.0 earthquake is going to go all the way around the planet. I think I already just showed it to you. Again, we haven't even talked about what to look for in South America yet, but the spread is going all the way over to South America. I mean, you can see it right here. And the spread is also going all the way over to the edge of the Indo-Australian plate. So when I start looking up to the north, the spread should go all the way up to the north, and this is our stepping stone path. But that means every middle point between our current sets of earthquakes is going to get hit up the coast by at least a 5. So we would be looking at a 5 where the rings overlap here at Tokyo, or upper 5. Also 5 to upper 5 where the rings overlap here on Fukushima. Another 5 to upper 5 striking up here at Hokkaido where the rings overlap. And another 5 to upper 5 striking here, going all the way off the northeast tip of Hokkaido into the Kuril Islands. So, it's like 4 or 5 5s or bigger that are going to be striking at these middle points between these current sets of 4s. So, between the 4s, we should see larger earthquakes develop at each middle point. To the south, I would think that's where the bigger earthquake is going to strike. And this should all happen this week. Once we get up here to Kamchatka, we've got the eruptions at Kluchevskoye volcano, that's in Russia. But the plate boundary goes up and around. Let me make sure you can see all this. It goes up and around and makes a bend to the east. This is Kamchatka. And look at the earthquakes. So, we have an open area. I said this is going to be filled in with 5s going up to the north. Once we get here east of Kamchatka, I would expect it to all pull back up and for us to see a new significant sized earthquake in the Aleutian Island chain within the next several days. Could be equal or very close in size to what's going on all the way down here. So maybe like in the mid-range 7. Let's say a half magnitude less than what's going on here at the Kermadec. That Alaska is due for a large quake. And the point where it should strike should be at the halfway point between our current sets of earthquakes. And if we consider this a big cluster going over on land, and this a spread of 4s going out across the Aleutians, I'd look between the cluster on land and the spread in the Aleutians, which puts us right in the middle of the Aleutians. Okay? Now, before we get into the United States, we have to jump all the way across. There's a tennis match effect that happens back and forth when we get a big disturbance on one side of the Pacific. You see the arrows, which way I have them pointing. But the reason I have the arrows pointing there, if you look across the Pacific to the south, check it out. Going down to the south and up to the north. And my arrows go across this way and this way, pointing from the areas that move to the areas where it shifts to. And the equal or almost equal spread of almost the same size quakes. Again, what are we dealing with? 4.9, 4.8, 4.7, and within a hair of a point each other across thousands of miles. But the distribution's across the plate boundary. Again, I just showed it to you. The plate boundary, the red lines. Across the plate boundary distribution in the course of a day, and it all traces back all the way across the plate. So it's compensating. We call this compensation movement. So if it's compensating, we should see a big release in South America as well. So it's not like it's just going to break over in Indonesia. It's not like it's just going to break up in Japan. And it's not like it's just going to break up in Alaska. This should all happen in the next week or so. But South America is going to break in between the current sets of earthquakes. There's 3 sets. So let's go in and find it. The middle point here between our current sets of earthquakes should be the impact point where it all breaks apart. So North Chile, going into the Argentina-Bolivia border. And the magnitude should be 1 magnitude less than this. So let's put it at low 7 this week for South America in the next 7 to 10 days. No bueno. Terremoto warning now. And terremoto means earthquake in Spanish, right? So get the warning out now to the people who live down in Chile, for instance, and going into Argentina, let them know a new 7's coming as a result of compensation for the other side of the plate. You can see it. It's on your doorstep. It's coming across now. Again, it's coming across the plate boundaries. It's traveling across the Pacific, and it's going to compensate for the shifting on this side. It's also compensating over here the same distance to the west. So far, it's in the 5 range, so I'll get into what's going to happen all the way over in the Mideast in a second. But South America, Chile, got to watch there. Secondarily, we should see fives, just like what's going on up in Japan. What I think is going to happen, I think also will happen here. So we should see a stepping stone path of fives and upper fives go down and around, and boom, we'll see a new 6 down here at the South Sandwich Islands. Let me show it to you here. We'll see fives go down and around, and boom, impact right where the plate boundary comes in. The cumulative total of everything coming down and around will tail end at the South Sandwich Islands. Same thing's going to happen to the north. Let's show you. Following up to the north, follow our halfway points. So South Peru is going to get a new 5 to 5.9, or no, 5.5 to 5.9. And here, we'll also get a 5.5 to 5.9 at the Colombia border with Ecuador. Why am I going with 5.5 to 5.9? One magnitude higher than the current 4s that are there now. So a step higher. The push is coming across. A new push is coming. Think of this like a large load coming across a bridge. The bridge is vibrating and shaking. It's carrying the load, but it's going to impact into the wall at the end of the bridge, and that's South America. It's going to try to go around South America, hence the new 6. The cumulative total, like a flowing river, it's all going to pile up or pool up here at our X to the south. The 5s are going to spread out across up to the north, and boom, we should see over in the Eastern Caribbean a new outbreak going up to near 6. I'll put it down here at Venezuela. So we should really warn Venezuela, the Eastern Caribbean, but if I'm off even by 200 miles, we have to warn everybody from Puerto Rico to Venezuela, basically across the Eastern Caribbean. Let me show it to you this way. Just like the South Sandwich Islands. Energy is going down and around, going over to the tip. New 6 down here. It's going to go up and around and go over to the tip, over to the Eastern Caribbean, and strike over here on the eastern side. Again, cumulative totals are spreading out across the whole plate. We got a big disturbance taking place now. Central America, let's get into it. We have to warn the people right here at Guatemala, which has been in the news in the past week because of Pacaya volcano, Santa Guido, and Fuego volcano. They were all 3 erupting last week, and it made the news when they were all 3 going. But when I show you what's there, it's going to make more sense. Look where all the rings overlap, too. They all overlap right there on that letter V. It stands for volcanoes. But let's go over and take a look here. Red line, plate boundary map. The spot I warned over to the east, it connects right back over here. So the energy's traveling out. I already showed it to you like 10 times now. It's an equal spread, too. It's almost like a stepping stone path in a garden, wouldn't you say? Especially across the South American continent. It's clustering in up here on the north side, but why? Look what's on the north side. It's going all around this, the other plate boundary. Which, isn't that the Nazca plate? Well, anyway, going over to the east, this is where all the volcanoes are, right where the 2 plate boundaries meet. That's where we're issuing the new warning for Central America. The warning for Central America should be in the upper 6 range. Sorry, guys, just got a little distracted. Upper 6 range. So mid-range to upper 6. Like I said, tennis match back and forth. It's going to go straight over to South America. That's where a big break's going to take place, near 7. We're going to see 5s go up and around and strike with the new 6 out at the east edge of the Caribbean, and a new 6, or very close to it, down at the South Sandwich. And then another brunt of this is going to be impacting in and trying to make its way across over this way into the Central Caribbean, but it's going to get caught up here, right in the middle, where the plate boundaries all converge like a road or a river system. And again, it should be in that mid to upper 6 level, a magnitude less than down in South America. Because the brunt's going straight across. So you can see, again, it's going straight across to South America as you'd expect, and it's going straight out over to the west. Speaking of over to the west, China, Nepal, Myanmar, right here. Now we have a cluster of earthquakes over in the Mideast, Afghanistan, basically, going up into South Russia, or Tajikistan. And we have the earthquakes out here at the edge of the Indo-Australian plate, which I already talked about at the start of the update, which I'll show you again right now. These 2. So this is the Indo-Australian plate, and this whole thing shifted last week, by the way, which prompted me to issue the warnings for the new 8 to strike over here next to New Caledonia. The new 8 struck over here next to New Caledonia yesterday. But the whole Indo-Australian plate had already shifted. Well, now it's shifting again. It's over on the perimeter edge. Beyond it, look. See where the arrows go. Why do I have the arrows making that curve? Look at the bend of the plate boundary up in Myanmar. So energy's flowing out of this obviously, it's going out to the mid-Indian Ocean, but it's also going to go around up to the north. And that means the halfway point between our earthquakes here and our earthquakes here, that fulcrum point, like a balancing scale. Everybody understands a balancing scale. Well, this is, again, spread out over an area, and we're looking down on it from above. It's like looking down on top of a scale from above that's tilting, and you're looking down on the middle fulcrum point of the scale where the balancing is taking place. But it's not a perfectly straight scale, is it? It goes around the bends of the plate. But nonetheless, that middle point gets filled in. And so that means China, Nepal, Myanmar, right where they all come together. Actually, this is India. So hold on. This is Nepal. This is part of India. This is Myanmar. Well, they all kind of come together right there. Bangladesh, isn't that the name? So we would watch at the middle point. That includes China. And the magnitude on this should be in the low 6 level. We don't see much 6.0 level activity, but I'm thinking low 6. Look, if it's a 5.6 coming out down to the south and a 5.1, if you add them together, it equals 5.7. Add in all the other 4s plus the volcanoes. You got to remember Mount Sinabung is erupting right here. That equals at least one 5.0 earthquake. Raung is another eruptor over here, and it's at least one 5.0 earthquake. So if you add those all together, we're already getting up to like a 5.9, upper 5s worth of energy. Add in the rest that's coming over from out of this. Looks like China's on the list going into Myanmar for a new 6. That would also be happening this week over the next several days. I don't think Russia's going to get out of this either. Look, it's going up to Japan. It's going to spread over to Alaska. Do you think they're going to sit high and dry? How about we watch Siberia? Niet. Earthquake. Niet. Special Agent Dutch Sense. Nobody even tuned into me from over here. Who even cares? But I'm going to issue the warning at Lake Baikal here. And that's the big lake right at the center of the screen. And we'll watch for a mid-range 5 to come across Siberia. How am I coming to that conclusion? Well, if we're going to be dealing with 6s up here in Japan, once we get into the plate, it should absorb a little of the energy and knock it down by a half magnitude or so. So if I'm wrong, it'll be bigger, I think. So I would look at the Mongolia-Russia border region next to Lake Baikal, because energy's coming across. Mideast. Okay, so I don't have many Iranian viewers either, but I would watch on the plate boundary in South Iran for a new big break to take place. And by big, I mean it. So if we have 6.0 activity coming out of China, and we have 5.5 or greater coming out of Lake Baikal, then it should pull back up over here and strike on the middle of the plate boundary, the red line between our current sets of earthquakes, just like the rest of the planet. We have to go down and around the bend of the plate, and we find that middle point between what's going on over in Europe, what's coming out of Asia or expected to come out of Asia. Well, what's going on over in Europe? The 6 point whatever, this was a 6.9 in the last 48 hours. They downgraded it to 6.3, but let's just call it a near 7 in Greece. So we got big movement on one side, and we've got big movement expected on the other. That means in the middle, you're sandwiched like a trash compactor. It's squishing in on both sides on the red line on the plate boundary. That means Iran's going to break with something probably about the size that struck in Greece, unfortunately. So while we're going to see 6s coming out of China, we're still dealing with this over in Europe. That means the halfway point between the two is a combination between the two. And that means upper 6 level for Iran. I hope I'm wrong on this. How many is that? I didn't even write it down. I'm just doing this all just by winging it basically right now. Again, I don't have previous examples to go on. So, going over to the west, we go over into Europe. Our spread is already taking place over the past day and a half. But I want to warn everybody right now in Croatia, Poland, Romania, Italy, Spain, Algeria. All of these locations are going to get hit. They're all going to be hit by something at least 1 magnitude higher than we see over the past day. So not counting the 7, how high are we going? Well, the highest these are all going is into the 4 range. Highest is 4.7 aftershock. So I would look for a full magnitude higher to go up into Croatia. That means 5.7 in Croatia. That means upper 5 level in Central Europe. So where do we watch? We watch between our current sets of earthquakes, and that's right here in Croatia. There's a 2.2, and the big cluster down in Greece. The halfway point is Montenegro, Albania, and technically you could even say Bosnia, Croatia. So they're all within 100 miles of each other. So starting up to the north, we warn Croatia. Then going to the south, we warn Bosnia, Montenegro, and Albania. And the magnitude, 5.7. Up in Poland, I would look for a magnitude less, so upper 4 to near 5.0. In Poland, right near the Poland border. So watch out in Poland. Anytime we see 5.0 level activity, it's enough to cause mine collapses. Over to the west, over into Italy, I'm going to warn for an upper 4. Just like in Poland, I'm going to warn Italy to be on watch for the same size. And in Italy, we look between our current sets of earthquakes as well. We would have to consult the Italian earthquake feed to get all the smaller earthquakes. So you know what? Let's just go ahead and do that. I don't normally open up the INGV Italian list. I don't even know if it's going to work. It might not work. I haven't opened it up in years. No, months. There we go. Okay, so this is in the past day and a half, 2 days for Italy, reported by the Italian agency. Look where we're moving. Norcia is currently moving with the most number of earthquakes. Then we spread out across South Italy. We get down to Sicily, where all the eruptions are happening down at Mount Etna. And up to the north, we have a few between Turin and Milan, between Turin and Venice, right up at the Swiss border. Turin is over here on the west side. Okay, so that in light, we watch between our current sets of earthquakes, which puts Abruzzo, the Abruzzo range, south of Norcia, in between these two sets of quakes right here. And our magnitude should be the same size in Poland, so we're looking at upper 4. Should be this week. 4s are about to return to Italy, it looks like. Now, 5s should go down here next to Gibraltar, maybe even into the upper 5 level. At Gibraltar, North Morocco, North Africa. Did you guys know that this is the quote-unquote antipode, the opposite side of the planet, as the 8.0 earthquake? So if you were to go through the planet and come back out on the opposite side, it brings us out right down here in South Europe, Spain, Gibraltar, Morocco, Portugal. This is the antipode of the big quake on the opposite side of the planet. Now, wait a second. South Spain broke apart a few weeks ago, destroying buildings, causing major damage, all those videos on YouTube. I don't think that's going to happen again. But antipode earthquakes do happen. There's been studies on this, enough that it's drawn even the attention of the professionals. So on top of all the other warnings I've got going, I'm going to warn South Europe, Spain, Gibraltar, North Africa for the potential of a large earthquake above 6.0 but below 7.0. It's a broad swath that I'm warning for, a whole magnitude swath. And the time frame on that I'm going to watch for the rest of this week, starting yesterday, so 6 more days. Now, this is not really an earthquake forecast for this location because with antipode earthquakes, they're, I would say hit or miss. It depends on how big the earthquake is and whether or not it spreads out. We've seen enough antipode activity that I gotta issue the warning now. The magnitude, I don't know what to warn for. I would warn for anything from 6.0 upper 5 plus all the way up to the 8. But realistically, the odds of an 8 or anything big happening in North Africa are so slim that it more likely would be a big earthquake, but nothing mega size. So I don't have many examples. Oh, and the other thing, I don't have many other examples to go on this. And in observational science, you have to go on prior examples. So I don't have many other 8 examples. There's only one every few years with the 8.0s usually. So this is a learning curve for me on the antipode thing here. But a 4, I think it was a 4.4, took down buildings a couple of weeks ago in South Spain. So anything above 4.4, we got to warn for. And again, when you warn them, you tell them this. Well, you tell them why I'm warning. You say, look, you're the exact opposite side of the planet, called the antipode, and there's study after study that's come out over the past several years about antipode earthquakes happening within a few days of the big earthquake on the opposite side of the planet. And that there's a corresponding effect, and that it's a big effect. It's not like there's just some small earthquake that happens on the opposite side of the planet. So you get a big earthquake on one side of the planet, you look to the opposite side of the planet for a big release. Let me give you a past example when this happened. Several years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there was a huge earthquake here off the coast of New Zealand. It was a 7-point-something earthquake. And then, within the same week, all the way over at the antipode of New Zealand, which is Italy, Italy got its biggest earthquake in 40 years. They were in the same week, exact antipodes of each other. And it was a 7 in Italy that they downgraded to a 6.8. But it was a 7 here and a 7 here in the same week a few years ago. So now we're dealing with an 8. But the antipodes are different. We're in the Kermadex, and that puts the antipode into South Europe, just over from Italy. Wild, right? So that's what we have to watch for, unfortunately. United States, Alaska, Hawaii. So I already talked about Alaska. Aleutian Island chains are probably going to be seen in the upper 6 level or mid to upper 6 level coming in through the Aleutians. Anchorage should see upper 5. Once we get into the plate, I hope we're going to be taking a step down, and I say hope. So I don't normally put much hope in my broadcast, but I'm hoping to see it take a step down. Otherwise, it'll keep its momentum, and we'll see a upper 6 strike in Anchorage as well. But I would think it would take a step down because we're going into the edge of the plate, and that absorbs some of the energy. But if the plate absorbs any energy coming in from the northwest, going down in the United States proper into the lower 48, guess what's going to pick up? Slow slipping. Slow slipping's about to pick back up. The plate is about to go into shift overdrive. This interferes with our normal flow, the shift that happens in the Pacific Northwest with slow slips after the rest of the Pacific goes into overdrive. So the whole Pacific goes into overdrive, then United States starts to shift at the Juan de Fuca fracture zone, coming in on land to the Cascadia quote-unquote subduction zone. I would look for new activity to develop on land after the plate starts shifting. Now, are they going to report earthquakes out in the ocean? That's the question. So if they report the earthquakes out in the ocean, just like last week, we should see something in the upper 5 level to low 6 strike out in the ocean, in the middle of the giant open silent zone, which really isn't silent because they're just not reporting quakes there, by the way. But we're going to watch there in the middle anyway, which puts us right in the axial seamount off the coast of Washington and Oregon. The magnitude should be about the same as the rest of the planet's diffusion, so by the time it gets to the U.S., it should be in the upper 5 to low 6 level, striking right out here in the middle of the Juan de Fuca fracture zone. Again, at the axial seamount. Let's go back over to the USGS map so we can really pinpoint it, the spot that I'm going to warn right here. This jagged edge that comes out on the edge of the axial. And it should just be it should be consistent with the rest of what's going on the rest of the plate. But on land, all this should start to shift. Big time. I'm going to turn on the last 24 hours of earthquakes. This is going to show us just the last day's worth of events. And the reason I'm doing that is so we can see what's currently moving in the U.S. So that'll give us a good idea of what to expect over the next day or 2 days incoming. So like I said, we're going to watch out in the ocean. On land, the clusters are noticeable. They're on the edge of the craton again. And we're going in out of Idaho, going down into Yellowstone National Park that died out completely. No earthquakes reported out of Yellowstone, but yet there are hundreds of tremors there per day as the magma is shifting. So we're going to have to watch where it all comes from. This has all gone quiet too. We have one earthquake. Is that even a quake or is that an explosion? Morton, Washington. Well, we're just north of Mount St. Helens with this lone earthquake. But with a lone earthquake, I've got to go check the tremors now. Hold on. We're going to go look at the tremors and see what the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network shows as of today. Wait a second. 66 epicenters, 66 different vibrations as the plate is shifting. But look at the distribution. Going across Vancouver Island, down to southwest Washington, going across central and southwest Oregon, and pooling up in the north part of the valley of California. Well, I'll be the whole Juan de Fuca fracture zone out here in the ocean, corresponding with these points on land, has started to shift today. Let's go back to yesterday. One little cluster of 12. Okay, so we quadrupled in the last day, the number, and the area certainly went exponentially larger. But all these spots on land correspond to the Juan de Fuca fracture zone out in the ocean. The jagged edges, like a letter M, capital M, and you can go back to the USGS plate boundary map. The spots where the jagged edges are point into the spots which are shifting on land. So Vancouver Island, down into Washington, Oregon, Northern California. Check it out. Look at Northern California. The Mendocino Ridge comes in. The Gorda Escarpment Mendocino Ridge goes down to the south. It's all shifting. Okay, so upper 5, low 6. I would put it probably at upper 5. Striking out in the ocean. On land, 4.5 plus coming into Washington State. It's rare. We don't normally see it, but the whole plate's shifting. I would put it right in the Seattle area. So let the people in Seattle know we've got a push coming in. Alaska's about to move. The Juan de Fuca fracture zone is about to start to go into overdrive. And, oh, wait, hold on. The ETS, the episodic tremor slip, should start to pick up. And that may interfere with what I'm telling you right now. So if a bunch of red dots appear on the screen, hundreds, if not thousands of them start to appear, that will change things. And I'll have to get back on and update my warning right now. But as it stands now, Washington 4.5 plus. Seattle. Between the current sets of earthquakes over the past few days, which struck up in the Strait of Juan de Fuca, you don't see them now, and this new quake down here. Okay? Pretty basic. California, we're going to watch right off the coast of Eureka. And it, too, should be in the upper 4 to low 5 level. So if we're going to get an upper 5 to 6 out in the ocean, I'd expect a magnitude less to come rolling in on land. It's not that much loss, really, to go from a 6 down to a 5. But Eureka. Now, the number of earthquakes is going to go up in California. So just remember where these little dots of 1 and 2 earthquakes are. So we got like one right there in Nevada and another one up here in northeast California. We do have a stack at the geysers of California. That's a geothermal pumping operation. And just onesie-twosies going across the Bay Area. So just remember this, how low it looks and how all the earthquakes fit on the screen right here, right now, in the course of a day. And in a few days' time, on my next update, even maybe, we're going to see these just skyrocket up through the roof. We're going to see the number of earthquakes go up. We'll call that a frequency increase, by the way. So the frequency is about to increase. It's like somebody's beating a drum, and then they increase the beat of the drum, or a snare drum. They start rolling the snare drum very fast. The frequency is about to increase as the new push comes in. And the new push is already on its way. The check's in the mail. It's already going around the rest of the entire Pacific. Hence the earthquake spreading out across the entire Pacific. It comes up and around through Alaska down to us, and that's why it takes an extra few days for it to get to us. Southern California, you guys, same size that strikes in Northern California. This is routine basic. We see a upper 4 to near 5 come in at Eureka. We watch all the way down at Southern California for an upper 4 to 5 to strike. Now, this spot here should be at the end of the week, so we're talking about several days from now, I think. But I have to issue the warning now. It could hit starting tomorrow, but I think we're going to see the flow come in first. Southern California, west of Salton Sea, on the most famous earthquake spot in Southern California, the San Jacinto. And it should be about the same size that comes rolling into the north. So if it's a 4.9 or a 5 to the north, it would be a 4.9 to 5 to the south. So what about the middle then? Well, we just got a new earthquake there. How about that? Ridgecrest seems to be getting hit every time I issue a warning for Southern California. I mean, it's been like 5 times now where I'm issuing a warning for here, and it hits here. Now, that broke apart a year and a half ago with the big one, the big 7. That was the biggest earthquake in 20 years in California, by the way, that broke there. So I wouldn't be shocked if we're going to see a 4 up north, or a 5. An upper 4 to 5 up north, and an upper 4 to 5 down south. That in the middle, we would see the combined total of that, and that would put us certainly above 5. So we would have to warn Ridgecrest now, and I may adjust that further to the north depending on what happens in the next few days, since we're talking about probably at the end of the week for this. But I would put it at maybe a mid-range 5. Maybe even something bigger at the middle point. And the middle point is in between all our sets of quakes here. And hold on, let's just zoom in and find it. So that would put it between Monte Cristo and Ridgecrest. Let's just call it Cozo Junction. Over to the east, we have to warn Colorado. Colorado's going to be getting hit with some rare earthquake activity, most likely next to the pumping operations. Should go up into the 4 level. Same with Oklahoma. Oklahoma should also get a new 4 on top of the previous almost 4 that struck at the pumping operations. We should also see new 3.0 strike down here at the southern tip of the edge of the Craton down in Alabama-Mississippi border region. We should also see new 3.0 level activity strike over on the East Coast, this time back to Virginia. And the way I'm determining this, our 1.9 up in Connecticut is the northernmost point, and the bend of the Craton down to the south is our southernmost tip. And we look at the halfway point between the bend and the quake, and that puts us right in here. Again, Virginia, North Carolina border region. And it should too also be in the 3-ish range, maybe even larger. It might be the combined total of everything coming out of Colorado and Oklahoma, in which case it would be into the 4 range. Far northeast, we also have to warn Vermont. Vermont! New Hampshire! Guys! Hey, watch out. You got a small earthquake coming up your way. You might feel it. Should be in the 3-ish range as well. Hawaii is the last spot that I should probably talk about. And that's only in light of Mauna Loa and what's going on there. Are we shocked that Mauna Loa is doing some weird stuff? In light of the Middle East rift zone reinflating and blowing with its own thing a few months back? Are we shocked that Mauna Loa is doing something when the rest of the plate goes into absolute overdrive, spreading out to South America, spreading out all the way over to Indonesia, and spreading out up to Japan? Look where Hawaii resides. It's on the Hawaiian Island chain, of course, but it connects back into this under seamount chain that goes up to right where the split is. Up at, well, Russia, basically. I would say the Aleutians, actually, but Russia. And then the under seamount chain goes down to the south and makes a crescent-shaped bend and goes all the way into South America, where it crescents into South Peru. This under seamount chain, though, is definitely connected. And everything from there to the east has these equally spaced fracture zones that look like almost like latitude on a map. And Hawaii has broken off and gone out into the middle between the two fracture zones. So when there's a big push coming from over here and it's going across, and there's a big push coming from here and it's going up and around, what do you think happens to Hawaii when the push is big enough? It gets compressed. And in the past, for instance, we saw a deep 8.0 earthquake here, and we saw a spread that went up and around the same time, that's when Hawaii drained. And Mount Cleveland erupted up in Alaska on the same day that Hawaii drained down here on the fracture zone to the south. It's not a coincidence. They're tied together across this. Which this whole under seamount chain is tied back over to the west, where the upwelling pressure is coming in on the underside of the plate. And that gets me back to the start of the update with the deep earthquakes. Look at the screen. What I think's happening is with the deep earthquakes, they're hammering in on the underside of the plate, which then leads to shallower, larger earthquakes. This is happening down in the magma, down below the plates, coming up into the asthenosphere, which is just the semi-melted plasticky magma down below the plates itself. Then the plate is rigid, and it absorbs all that energy focused in on one of these points, but we're talking hundreds of, not thousands of miles across, where it's focusing in on maybe a few dozen mile across area. Then the hammering action takes place, like in a wave tank. And as the hammering action takes place on either end of the tank, it pumps more energy into the system. And as you pump more energy into the system, it doesn't just get chaotically formed waves in the system. The standing wave forms, and you pump more energy in by squeezing these two together or pulling them apart, these two ends. And now think of this tank like the red lines on the plate boundary. So this is the containing tank, and the hammering action is putting standing waves into the tank, and the standing waves spread out across the tank, equally spaced somewhat, and about the same size, just like in a standing wave tank experiment. And the middle points of each wave, the trough or the bottom of the wave and the peak or the top of the wave, that the top of the wave fills in the middle point of the bottom of the wave as it spreads through the container. Let me show you. I can just park my mouse over it, and you see each peak fills in the previous valley. So that's what's happening with the earthquakes, it appears, and the magnitudes, or the power behind it, the amplitude, just like what we were looking at in that tank, that it tends to stay steady. It doesn't dissipate much as it goes out across a huge area, like you would think. Or like professionals thought, I should say. And they incorrectly thought elasticity applied to the spread of what causes earthquakes, and it doesn't. Might even be some kind of radio wave, maybe. Some kind of very low frequency down in the earth, coming up from the core. From the plasma core. Hello? From the plasma core. Hello? Did you hear me? All right. Okay, that's my forecast. So we're going to watch for this over the next week. It's about to go through the roof. So let's recap. Again, just summing it up real quick. 7s spreading out from the 8. 6s spreading out from the 7s. 5s spreading out from the 6s. Do you understand? And we watch our halfway point between our current sets of earthquakes. So New Zealand, you're about to get hit by something that's fairly significant down in between our current sets of earthquakes. One set near Wellington and Kaikoura. The other set north of New Zealand in the Kermadec. The bigger one, I hope, strikes out in the ocean in the middle of nowhere. And that should be 7. Going over to the west, it should maintain into the upper 6s. But that still means near 7.0 activity coming into Indonesia. It means 6s and upper 6s going into Japan. It means 6s going into China. It means 6s going over into Iran. And it means upper 6s coming back into Europe again. It means 5s going across South Europe. Croatia. It means 4s over in Italy, enough to cause damage. It means a potential, but not likely, potential for it, earthquake in North Africa down by Gibraltar that would be extremely rare. And if that happens, that would totally confirm antipode earthquakes to me for the final time. West Coast United States, it's going to be in the 5 range out in the ocean most likely, and 4s on land, and then near 5s down in Southern California when this whole thing is finally over. Up in Alaska, it should be in the 6s. So upper 6s, mid to upper 6s up in the Aleutians, maybe even bigger, and then going into Anchorage a step lower. South America was where we really could see it, and man, look at it now. Hold on, did a new earthquake strike there? Hold on. It did. Hold on, is that right? It did. A new earthquake struck there in the past few hours, up to the north, on the north side. That filled in the middle point. Look at that. Now the middle point has been filled in at North Chile, right where I issued the warning at the start of this broadcast. I hate it when this happens. Now I got to adjust the area. Okay. Now that the middle point has been filled in exactly at the spot that I showed you at the start of this update, when did this hit? 1:26 UTC. 1 hour ago. Not even 59 minutes ago it hit. Okay. Well, that divides the area in half. That puts the focus area now. Okay. What would you say the triangulated, quote unquote, middle point of all these earthquakes that we're looking at here on the screen would be? If you follow the plate boundaries. Here, hold on. Yeah, there it is on the USGS map. Look at that. Wow. All right. So we go at the middle point between all of these. How would you find it? you would go along the red line of the plate boundary, down where they all come together at somewhat that same equal space apart. That would mean central Chile is going to be the spot to get hit at our transfers underneath point, almost perfectly. Now that this 4.3 is hit here, that divides the area up to the north in half as well, which, again, South Peru is also going to get hit, now where the rings overlap. And the magnitude should be one magnitude higher than the 4.7 and 4.3. So upper 5. And I'm still standing by it. This would be the bigger one. This will be the noteworthy earthquake that could go up into the 7 range. Central America is going to be going into the 6 range, and so is the Eastern Caribbean. South Sandwich Islands, not many people down here, but you're also going to be going into the 6 range. And out in the middle of the Atlantic, nobody lives out here, maybe at Ascension Island. This is Ascension Island out here, this little speck of a dot, but I would look up on the north side up here, but that gets into next week, most likely. Iceland, I don't know what to tell you. This is an entirely separate event. They're looking for the potential of an eruption in Iceland. The professionals are. I see seismic taking place there, and I see that it's in line with the rest of the activity that went to the Azores last week and went up to the North Pole in the past few days. North Pole got hit. 5.0. Almost exactly at the physical North Pole, by the way. Take a look at it. It's kind of center of the screen here right now. There it is. So the North Pole got hit, and the physical North Pole is right here. You see that? How they all come together in a little point? And it's just off the physical North Pole. But that's in line with what struck out at the Azores, which was 5.0 range this past week. And then 5's hit here. But they said deformation is happening. They evacuated scientists, apparently. That's the story. I don't know what to make of it. But if there is a blast, I'll be back on to report on it. I see seismic. I see transfer going across Europe. I think that's normal. They see seismic going in. They see a little deformation. They think eruption. We'll wait and see who's right. I don't think eruption, but that's just me. I'll be famous last words, too. I better knock on wood, right? As soon as I say no eruption, it's going to go boom, and that's it. Or they'll set it off, right? They'll target a microwave gun on it. Okay. I'll be back at a moment's notice. Do you have an earthquake plan? You should at least take the time to develop an emergency kit and to think about what you would do if an earthquake hits. You're supposed to take shelter underneath a table or a desk. It's pretty basic. But if your structure isn't going to withstand an earthquake, if you're in a stone stack, cinder block house, or other structure that's not earthquake ready, you would need to immediately, after the earthquake, maybe think about trying to find a safe place outside. But that would mean you need to know where to go. So you should find the safe place beforehand, just in case you ever have to exit. And then also have an emergency kit. The emergency kit will come in handy for all sorts of things. I used mine when the power went out here in the middle of the winter just a couple of weeks ago. It was the coldest it's been in years, decades. It was negative 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Amazing. And the power went out here. Well, we already had certain things in the emergency kit that helped. It really did help. And so you can use your emergency kit for other things aside from an earthquake. That's what I'm getting at here. You can use it for a fire, a flood evacuation, have the extra ID, have an extra set of keys. Yes, I'm being a little naggy right now, but I'd rather be a little naggy than you not be prepared. Okay, we're going to save this. As a video, we will come back to see what hits versus what misses. I would like to remind everybody, 6 days ago, now 7 days ago, we issued the warning on my channel for an 8.0 earthquake to strike next to New Caledonia. Let me show you New Caledonia. This is New Caledonia right here, this long sliver of an island. And we said east of New Caledonia at the U-shaped bend, we would watch for an 8 to hit, and it's been years since an 8 has struck anywhere on the planet. That was 7 days ago. I based that on the deep earthquakes that were happening here on our letter D. Hammering action again. That hammering action coming in on the underside of the plate. So a bunch of deep earthquakes were happening here, and that prompted the warning to be issued. Then, 10 days later, I issued a 7-day watch. 3 days beyond the watch time, the 8.0 earthquake struck right here. So we warned here for an 8 to strike within 7 days. And 10 days later, or 10 days, not 7, 3 days beyond my warn time, this hit. I'll consider that an earthquake forecast hit. I'm a one-man operation trying to get it down within a few hundred miles. Eventually, I will get it down to 200 miles like I want to. I can sometimes. I can't. I'm working on it. Working on something everybody said was impossible. Hey, by the way, did you know that earthquakes are not random? But it's not that one earthquake causes the other earthquake. Did you know that? Another way to look at it like this. Here, check it out. The wave tank. It's not that one wave causes the other in the wave tank. It's that each wave is part of a greater process that's being caused by these compressing sides that pump energy into the system. So it's not that this wave causes this wave, but yet they're the same size, aren't they? And they move and fill in each other's middle points, but they're not causing each other. It's not that one wave causes the other. It's that the hammering action is causing the waves. And so the hammering action is the deep earthquakes coming in on the underside of the plate. Again, they're raised high off the globe so we can see them easy. Hammering action comes in. Then the spread of the waves takes place, and that drops off the earthquakes equally spaced. Look at this over the last, here, we're looking at 5.0 and greater. Here's 5s and greater over the last 7 days. Now remember what I just showed you in the wave tank video. But to see the spacing on this, we have to look almost a planet away, don't we? Hold on. Yeah, this is 7 days worth of earthquakes, 5.0 and greater. This isn't me doing anything funny with the placement. Now compare that to the equal distribution of waves through the tank. How each wave is about the same height, the same shape, and each wave fills in the previous wave's middle point as it's pumped into the system. And then, let me make sure you guys can see all this. Then you look at this. And then you look at the plate boundary map where it's all going through the tank. Mother Nature's tank. And Mother Nature's tank goes across, hey, hold on. A new 4.3. Hold on. Dang, okay, this is going to be the never-ending update because each point that I was warning previously is now being hit by a new 4. Look, a new 4 has just struck on the coast of Hokkaido, Japan, cutting the area previously in half between the two previous sets of earthquakes, right down in the middle point between the previous sets of 4s. Well, that now shifts the area to Fukushima to the south where the rings overlap here, off the coast of Tokyo and Fukushima, and to the north, up here, where all 3 sets of rings overlap up into the Kuril Islands. So that means the new 5s are going to strike off the coast of Tokyo and the Kuril Islands. It's further divided in half again. Anybody else want to come in on the mix? Going once? Let me do the auction sound. 1, 2, 3, 4. Going once, going twice. Sold, we're out of here. You guys be safe. Word up and much love. Peace out.